Great, thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. Christopher, you have the first question. Would you like to vocalize?
Sure, I can vocalize it. So this is slide 8, and essentially you list out some staffing gearing ratios around how we think about this. And my question is, based on the last years of experience, do you think that, these are about right? Do you think we should add more or subtract from any areas, or, adjust the ratios in any way?
Thanks for the question. Yes, I think we are going to be adjusting a little bit based on my conversation with Eric. I think the golden ratio is still a 1-to-1 as that with a product group. But for more complex features, for example, Geo, where you're setting up two GitLab, first and secondary, and failing over, those numbers may change. We're potentially looking at 2 in those areas, and like we will add that exception clause there. But we will try to stick to a 1-to-1, similar to the designers. And it also depends if we split up the groups healthily, then the numbers gearing ratio would work.
Cool. Any of the other ratios that you want to call out?
I would like to keep the ratio aggressive because I want to be loud and clear that the way we do quality GitLab, we're not the QA team, because we don't test. It's the engineering teams to share the responsibility in writing the tests, and we're responsible for the test infrastructure. The role is essentially evolving into developers, but for tests. So I think focusing on all the tests and all the stack, pruning the tests, I think that's the goal here. But yeah, bottom line, I think we'll try to be aggressive with the ratios.
Thanks for the answer.
Thank you for asking. Anyone would like to go next?
I have one, Mac, and I'll just say it.
Sure.
Since I joined a little bit late. What do you think is the lowest hanging fruit for improving pipeline durations? I noticed that was one of the items on the slide.
Man, this is a hard one. This is a good question. I think there are 2 things that come to mind. Deleting old tests and pruning them. I think we are really good at adding tests. Sometimes we need to remove them. The lowest hanging fruit is not that, but it costs us more money, which is throwing more resources at it. And given the scale that we're increasing the pipelines, that's an expensive route to take, and sometimes we need to be more drastic in testing the right things. I think having more folks doing analysis on the test stack would help. If that's not in line with your thinking, I'm all ears.
No, that's exactly what I was wondering. So it sounds like it may not be the easiest thing to do, but probably we'll get the most bang for our buck. Is that what you're kind of saying, or?
Yes, yes. And a lot of that is also hanging on the hiring plan, because we are plugging the Band-Aid on, sorry for using violent terms, like the biggest higher priority, which is the release, right? We need to make sure everything that goes out, that runs every day on staging, is crisp to help the delivery team deploy. And the triage that comes in and the enterprise has gaps, that's already a full plate for the team. Like, we have absolutely no resource, no staffing to plan ahead. There are some discussions now with, and I appreciate Darva and Michelle bringing up, is they would like us to help risk analysis earlier on, not at kickoff, like way before kickoff. So when the kickoff comes, people know exactly what tests to write, and then it gets factored into capacity planning. I think we would love to reach that state, but we really need more people at this point. And I'm glad that we are able to go look for a quality engineering manager for growth now, and 2 more people under that person. And then more people in dev, especially editor and Gitly, which is a crucial point in self-managed prospects and customers. That was a long answer. Hopefully that answers your question. Cool. Anyone else?
I've got one more.
Yes, please.
On slide 11, I'll take this in as soon as I'm done. But on slide 11, I was looking at the team-wise coverage percentage. Can you explain what that metric means first? So just make sure I understand what that means.
Sure. And we have the whole department on the call, so we're more than happy to help take notes. This is EE is the enterprise GitLab EE test gap. This is what we planned. I believe you can click on the link here on the list of test cases coverage that we wanted to close out in Q3. The progress is overall 63%. This is the end-to-end planned test coverage. It doesn't capture the unknown unknowns, so just to be clear, but what we know that we need to have tests for. And then the bottom one is progress if you look at it by feature tiers. So if your features in Ultimate is 61%, I think we believe we went with Starter first because that's most of our customers where they are, and we're working towards Premium. Ultimate is, sorry, did I get that wrong, Tanya, Ramya? Did we start with Premium first or Starter first?
I think we started at the bottom since it impacted more customers. Okay.
So it seems like we're a bit behind on Premium. And then to the right-hand side is if you split up by stage, that is the current progress we have.
I think we had originally thought that we should start with Ultimate, so that's why that percentage is a bit higher. And then we shifted gears to start with things that impact the most customers.
Yeah, I would hate if we started with Premium and it was the lowest percentage, or that we prioritize Premium. Maybe is the right way to put it. So have you gotten feedback from product on where we should focus? Or is it just how are you prioritizing?
We did. So we were pointed to our revenue, and then Premium is Premium and Starter is the first place to work on.
Okay. I guess what I'm surprised by is Verify is so low, if that's really the priority. So that would be kind of my question is we got a lot of captive customers who are obviously very big on our CI, and it feels like that would be an area of focus.
Right. So I see Steph is smiling. Because we only have one person, and then we also pull into if you recall, the load balancer issue on GitLab.com, and we were helping to reproduce that. And that was also like another bigger file that we were pulled in before Seth could do any more progress there.
Yeah, but we're doubling down, Christopher, on Verify, so that's going to improve here shortly.
How are we doubling down?
Huh? Just me. Just me on amount of time I spend on it compared to other things.
That's not the right answer, Seth. The right answer is
that's not the right answer.
We have another person joining for Verify, and that's another staffing that we'll be adding. And that's in slide number 2. And in the box for Ops CI/CD, this one hit one staffing count for Verify.
So cool. This is just a suggestion is that if products prioritize this area, one thing you consider also is a headcount reset. I know it's disruptive, but if you feel like this is an area that that was just my reaction. But if products like, oh yeah, that's fine, we'll eventually get to that. That's great. But if we feel like that's a better area of focus, that's deprioritizing another area might be the right thing to do at this point.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. We'll definitely keep that in the cards. For the reset.
If I could add one thing to this context is that the end-to-end, the EE test gaps initiative is more on covering scenarios for the happy path of the paid features, not all the scenarios that we prefer to cover in lower tests, lower levels of the tests.
That's a great call out, Mehmet. Thank you. So yeah, the end-to-end tests, expensive ones, are sanity checks to make sure that the critical features are working. All the other edge cases should be in either integration or unit tests. That's how we keep the test suite performant.
That's an interesting question because I think a lot of customers. Well, I don't know the statistics on this, but I'd love to see whether this is validated or not. Which is my suspicion is a lot of customers pay for our product even though they're using free tier just because of their scale. So like scale is a feature. So then you can't necessarily just look at whether it's a paid for feature because it's features that need to work consistently and work well all the time and at scale. and that would be my biggest concern is like in the case of Verify, if they're all free features, but it's, a vast majority of our customers are using them. If they start breaking in new and unique ways, that's going to cause it to go from a lovable portion of our product to just a complete portion of our product. So I don't know if we're necessarily in danger of that extreme scenario, but it just feels like that way, just based on the way the statistics work out on this page.
Yeah. So, and this might be the first time we're unveiling the numbers. So next time we'll definitely have more background on this. But we did discuss that, and the intent where this came out from was actually a retrospective with a existing customer.com, and they requested that, hey, please make sure your enterprise features have end-to-end tests to cover them. And that is why it's coming from. If I have more resources, we would definitely have the coverage for free features as well, because that should be working 100% of the time, not 110%.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is not a commentary on performance in any stretch of the imagination. It's all about areas of focus, right? And just thinking about it from that perspective. So it sounds like due diligence was done here. Thanks for entertaining my foray into this area.
No, this is what good conversations are for. We are more than happy to answer questions. Thank you for asking.
Okay, I had the next question. So regarding just the slide on workload and the general responsibility of everyone for testing, has there been any thought on whether offering some training focused on effective testing methodologies would be helpful in spreading that load out and helping kind of with that, especially maybe in terms of newer features coming online?
We did this a quarter ago with recordings and AMAs. I'm not sure, Wama, do you want to speak to that? Should we do something like that again? So to be clear, maybe the carrying of the message or the marketing wasn't done as effectively, so the turnout wasn't great. But we're definitely thinking of training materials for the whole entire org. And I could start with a page in the quality engineering handbook that instructs or gives us tips on how to test and what to consider, especially around limits and scope that Seth and the team has been able to provide. They're called test heuristics. So at least we have a handbook page for it. We could definitely have more recordings and etc. Hopefully that.
Yeah, what I could add is that we had the AMA. We have other AMAs scheduled for one per quarter, specifically about the end-to-end test framework, and also I think in the last one we also covered the performance toolkit. We have worked quite heavily in the previous quarter also on documentation, but I think we can even maybe explore other resources like one resource that I usually use is Test Automation University. They have lots of free courses about many different topics in test automation that could be used by anyone inside or outside GitLab, inside or outside the quality department as well. So I think we should explore other resources as well.
I'd just like to add that I think it's valuable for the counterparts, the QA counterparts, to establish relationships with their teams. And I know that a lot of those are just being formed now, but I think that will improve things, because it's one thing to train and to know what to do, and it's another thing to have regular, frequent conversations and using the QA support like we should.
Yep, absolutely agree. Great. Anything else on point? Any follow-up on point 4? Otherwise, I'll moving on to point 5. Stephen.
Hey there. I'll keep my camera off, but I'm curious about the application limits on slide 25. I was interested in I see it's a large epic, many issues. Just maybe a quick summary on sort of key things in terms of challenges of either setting or understanding what limits should be enforced.
I'll be completely honest. I haven't read through the whole epic yet, but I appreciate the engineering work, especially from development and infrastructure that went into the research. I think we're getting data now. The concern is, the challenge is obviously the limits that we don't know, the unknown unknowns. The ones that we know, I think we could, documenting them should only take like a quarter, just put it in a handbook, which is because we were starting with an MVC with Axel, just have, so start with one section and just put either dev or CI/CD in. But yeah, the challenge would be, what have we not uncovered yet?
Gotcha. So the mystery factor.
Yes.
I can help a little bit. Stephen, is your concern, or is your question more around what the limits should be, or is it more around just general challenges we have in this area?
Not a concern really at all. I was just curious. Yeah, in other orgs I've seen, understanding what the limits should be is always, I think, the most difficult part. And it got me thinking about, like, this morning we had an outage where some resources got saturated. Do we have a way to feed that back into our process to understand, like, hey, if we had a limit on a certain number of jobs or some other way to define a limit to keep the same sort of outages from happening in the future?
Yeah,
and for our self-managed customers as well.
Yeah, so good question. I don't even know if we're necessarily even at that stage right now. The stage we're at is getting product to prioritize basically in implementing these limits. In most cases, I think we have a pretty good idea of what initial draft limits should be. And then once we have those, then we can figure out whether there's potential impact with scaling associated with that. In general, the product, because of our iterative nature, the product was not thought of in terms of putting limits in by default. In fact, if you read some of the documentation, it says something to the effect of if you put limits in by default, that's actually a negative customer experience. Though at scale on a .com site, you need to have limits in place just because people do things in new and creative ways, and that can cause what previous assumptions about what it was being used at to change, and then that causes other system effects. So I think right now where we're at is just one, looking at each area, trying to determine what the limits should be, which shouldn't take a whole lot of time, and then getting product to appropriately prioritize them. And that was kind of a distribution based on previous outages associated with this. This morning's is kind of interesting because it was my understanding, at least at this point, is it was primarily due to importation. And, that's a good example where we probably need to think about rate limiting, which is limiting, but it's still not the same as most of the way these limits are defined. That's more about the process of bringing in a new customer or a new repo.
Great. Thanks for all that good context, Christopher.
No problem.
So long story short, we are taking feedback from .com into these. Correct, Christopher? That's
yeah, it is. And, the ones that obviously are getting prioritized the most are the ones that are closest to the high usage areas and that we've seen challenges with.
Great, thank you.
Mike, I'll throw you a question. What are you most excited about over the next quarter for us to do or grow or learn?
I'm excited for our hiring pipeline for quality engineering managers. I think we have really two strong candidates right now that if we can get, it'll be really, really good for GitLab. So excited for the hiring and excited for contribute, actually. And like the rest is business as usual. Let's try to be excited about non-work items as well. That the things that make GitLab great, and the rest is going to be business as usual. Cool. Well, if there are no more items, I'll give everyone 10 minutes back. I'll see you on the company call, and I'll see you in 6 weeks thank you everybody, and thank you the quality department for contributing.